Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you into another Simple Truth Update. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard the old saying that if a politician's mouth is moving, they're lying? Well, when it comes to what you read of what they say, that is being controlled by the media. Is that a big shock to anyone who is aware of the true media that is out there? The corporation-controlled media? No. But for the lay people out there, this will be a shock to you. The New York Times has reported this to be true. And I want to share with you this article and get a more in-depth idea of what is happening when we hear what politicians are telling us, or at least when we read what they've approved. The New York Times admits that virtually every major news organization allows the news to be censored by government officials. In one of the most shocking articles that the New York Times has ever put out, a New York Times reporter has openly admitted that virtually every major mainstream news organization allows government bureaucrats and campaign officials to censor their stories. For example, almost every major news organization in the country has agreed to submit virtually all quotes from anyone involved in the Obama campaign or the Romney campaign to gatekeepers for, quote, approval before they will be published. If the gatekeeper in the Obama campaign does not want a certain quote to get out, the American people will not see it. And the same thing applies to the Romney campaign. The goal is to keep the campaign as on message as possible and to avoid gaffes at all costs. But this kind of thing is not just happening with political campaigns. According to the New York Times, quote approval has become commonplace throughout Washington. In other words, if you see a quote in the newspaper from someone in the federal government, then it is safe to say that a gatekeeper has almost certainly reviewed that quote and has approved it. This is another sign that the free and independent media in this country is a joke. What we get from the mainstream media is a very highly filtered form of propaganda. And that is one reason why Americans are turning away from the mainstream media in droves. People want the truth, and more Americans than ever realize that they are not getting it from the mainstream media. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the article goes on to give some examples of what they mean by what they're saying. The following quote comes from a recent article in the New York Times, and it is jaw-dropping. The questions come back redacted, stripped of colorful metaphors, colloquial language, and anything even mildly provocative. They are sent by email from the Obama headquarters in Chicago to reporters who have interviewed campaign officials under one major condition. The press office has veto power over what statements can be quoted and attributed by name. Most reporters, desperate to pick the brains of the president's top strategists, grudgingly agree. After the interviews, they review their notes, check their tape recorders, and send in the juiciest sound bites for review. The verdict from the campaign, an operation that prides itself on staying consistently on script, is often no. Barack Obama does not approve this message. What all of this means is that both the Obama campaign and the Romney campaign essentially have veto power over any quotes from those campaigns that we see in the newspapers. According to the New York Times, virtually every major news organization has agreed to submit their quotes for approval. Another example, It was difficult to find a news outlet that had not agreed to quote approval. Albeit reluctantly, organizations like Bloomberg, the Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Reuters, and the New York Times have all consented to interviews under such conditions. This is absolutely disgusting, and it goes against everything that our media is supposed to stand for. The following is what Joseph Farr had to say when he learned about this story. All I can say about these people I once considered colleagues is that I am so ashamed of them. I am mortified. They are humiliating themselves and a vital institution for any free society. It seems the biggest threat to the American tradition of a free and independent press is not government coercion, it's the willing submission of the press to being handled and managed by the government and politicians. Keep in mind that Joseph Farr has been working in the world of journalism for decades. He is deeply saddened to see what is happening to a profession that he deeply loves. But he is not the only one. Just check out what Dan Rather had to say during a speech back in 2009. At my age and stage, I have finally reached the point where I don't have to kiss up to anybody. What a wonderful feeling it is. Even so, his talk emphasized what he believes is the erosion of quality journalism because of the corporatization, politicization, and trivialization of news. Those three factors, Rather argued, have fueled the dumbing down and sleazing up of news and the decline of great American journalism. Likening media consolidation to that of the banking industry, Rather claimed that roughly 80% of the media is controlled by no more than 6 and possibly as few as 4 corporations. The control over the media in the United States is more tightly concentrated than ever before. Back in the early 1980s, approximately 50 corporations essentially had nearly total control of the media in the United States. Today, just 6 monolithic media corporations dominate virtually everything you watch, hear, and read. These 6 gigantic corporations own television networks, publishing houses, movie studios, newspapers, radio stations, music labels, and video gaming companies. Most Americans are absolutely addicted to information and entertainment, and those 6 massive corporations supply the vast majority of the information and entertainment that Americans take in. The amount of control that those 6 corporation giants have is absolutely incredible. For example, the average American watches 153 hours of television a month. If you can beam 153 hours of programming into someone's head each month, that gives you an awesome amount of influence over that person. There are some areas of the media that are not completely dominated by those corporations, but even control over those areas is becoming more highly concentrated than ever before. For example, Clear Channel now owns over 1,000 radio stations across the United States. The power that Clear Channel has over the radio industry in America is absolutely staggering. Even control over the internet is becoming much more concentrated. Giant corporations such as Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft are increasingly controlling what we see and hear online. But it really is the big 6 that dominate most of what we see, hear, and read on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, the simple truth of the whole matter is that we're finding out and we're discovering that it is more important to educate ourselves than it is to continue to entertain ourselves. If we have the means as far as the internet, the ability to buy books, go to the library, utilize that as a means of more education so that you can be in the know as best as you can of what's going on. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of The Simple Truth. And as I always tell you, the simple things are oftentimes the most profound, but yet they're the most difficult to put into practice and to actually do. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back with you real soon.